Hi, this is Mark Moneypenny. This is my EDL 853 case study, when a student's rights are wrong. In section 1, we have summarizing the case. A little background: Dr. Harvey is the superintendent of Dover Unified School District. He has built a good working relationship with the staff in every school. The parents in the community have been very supportive over the years. Nottingham High School was constructed in the early 1950s. It serves 3,200 students. It has relocatable trailers to provide enough classroom space. Reconstruction projects have brought most of the building up to code with the state and the federal standards to accommodate individuals with disabilities. But approximately 1/4 of the building has not been reconstructed due to lack of funds. Miguel Hernandez and his family moved to Dover. Miguel's parents read about Nottingham High School. The academic program and the football team were identified as outstanding in the state directory. The parents chose Dover so their 4 sons could participate in the football program. Miguel was considered to be the most talented quarterback since the 1960s. And if the team wins the game on Friday, it will guarantee the team is in the semifinals of the state championship. During the football game, Miguel was injured as he was tackled. He suffered a spinal injury, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. He spent months participating in a rehabilitation program and also keeping up with his schoolwork. Miguel and his parents all agreed that he was ready to go back to school. So Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez made an appointment to meet with the high school counselor, Mrs. Guzman, to discuss him returning to school. Mrs. Guzman assured them, upon written permission from the physician, he would be allowed to return to school. And to end the meeting, the parents informed her Miguel would be in a wheelchair, and the only accommodation they would foresee is he would need access to all of his classrooms. 2 weeks later, Miguel returned to school with a medical release. And they had a special assembly for Miguel honoring him. And after the assembly, he went to his first period class. And Miguel's first period teacher said he needed to go see Mrs. Guzman in her office. She informed Miguel that his schedule had been changed. And due to a lack of a wheelchair accessibility, his third period biology class was going to have to be changed to another science class that would definitely meet the graduation requirement. Unfortunately, the science course does not qualify as a college preparatory class. Mrs. Hernandez contacted the school to set up an appointment with me, the principal. Mrs. Hernandez said she has not been informed of the change in Miguel's schedule. She demanded that he be reinstated to the biology course. This biology course was required for the university Miguel wanted to attend. And before the meeting concluded, Mr. Howard Carey was introduced as Miguel's attorney. Mr. Carey asked if I was familiar with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Mr. Carey also asked me if I was familiar with the implications of denying his client access to the classroom at his school. And Mr. Carey reminded me that Miguel has the right to a free and appropriate public education. And moving on to the Section 2, the legal and ethical issues. The first legal issue I have is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And this act is an educational service designed to meet individual education needs of students with disabilities as effectively as a non-disabled student. And Section 504 defines a person with a disability if he or she has a physical or mental impairment which substantially limits one or more major parts of their activities, and has a record of such an impairment or is regarded to have such an impairment. Miguel is being discriminated because of the school does not have the wheelchair accessibility to the biology classroom. Rather than accommodating Miguel be able to have the class, they chose just to reassign him to a different, the counselor reassigned him to a different class. It would be more convenient for the school. And one of the ethical issues is, why did Mrs. Guzman not have the written 504 plan in place before Miguel's return? Another legal issue is that the free and appropriate public education, or otherwise known as FAPE. Since Miguel is in a wheelchair, he qualifies for FAPE under the Section 504. The appropriate education components of FAPE are at jeopardy due to the change in his schedule for the school's benefit, and basically it's up to the school's benefit, not for Miguel's best interest. Due to Miguel wanting to attend a college, he needs this course, so this would be considered harmful to Miguel's future. And we also have the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. The ADA Title II prohibits discrimination, which includes public schools. It doesn't specifically guarantee FAPE to every student, but schools are required to make a reasonable accommodation or adaptation necessary to safeguard persons with disabilities and access the proper amenities in the school. And this would definitely cover Miguel because it would have he needs access to all the programs in the school, and moving a class to a different spot in the building would definitely be a reasonable accommodation, and this would definitely be something that could happen with in the school. The other one is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. A law offering FAPE to qualified children with disabilities, ensuring related services. Miguel has not begun the evaluation and determination process based on his current needs, so he does not have an IEP written yet, but this step needs to take place as soon as possible to assist with receiving the necessary educational accommodations. This is just definitely one they need to have in their toolbox ready to go. Moving on to Section 3, I'm going to synthesize exactly what has happened. Nottingham High School is violating Miguel Hernandez's rights by denying him access to a class for college admission due to a lack of accessibility, which in turn places the school in a legal situation in regards to FAPE and Section 504. Moving on to Section 4, we have synthesizing the facts. Starting with the people, we have Miguel Hernandez. He's a sophomore, paralyzed during a football game. He is he's currently wheelchair bound. His schedule changed due to an inaccessible classroom, and he needs a biology course to be able to get into a college. And Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez, they have 4 sons. They met with Mrs. Guzman, the counselor, that he was in a wheelchair, and the only accommodation he would need was to be able to get all his classes. And they were upset about the schedule change. And then they wanted to set up a meeting with the principal. And then we have Mrs. Guzman. She's a school counselor, and she changed Miguel's schedule without notifying the family. And we have Mr. Howard Carey. He's the attorney for the Hernandez family, and he is questioning the students' rights of FAPE in Section 504. And the unknown things we have with Miguel Hernandez is how are his social and emotional skills after the injury? And the other students, are there any other students having the same accessibility issues, but they just haven't been reported? And Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez and Mr. Carey, will they permit an internal investigation into this matter to be able to hopefully clear it up? And the biology teacher, what is his or her reaction to this issue? The facts of the place, we have the town of Dover. It's a very supportive community of academics and athletics. It has 6 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school built in the 1950s. It serves 3,200 students. It uses relocatable trailers, and a quarter of the school is not up to code. The unknowns about the high school are there any other open biology classrooms accessible? If so, can one of the classrooms be switched? As a lot of the classrooms have certain labs set up. Certain science classrooms are set up a certain way. They just have to be that way. And if not, can the biology class be relocated to another room that's more accessible so that Miguel could actually get to the class? And how much funding is needed to be up to code? What funding is available for the district? And can funds be diverted from one source to another source to be able to make up the funds to be able to get the school up to code? Because all the money is in certain pots, so to speak, and you just have to be able to have the right money in the right place. And the facts about the program: the high school was identified as an outstanding in the state directory for academics and football. All Miguel's classes are accessible except for biology, and he was placed in the science course that meets the graduation requirement, but is not a college prep course. And the unknowns about the program: will the school permit an independent or a virtual course for this biology course? And how many other students are how many others are required? How many other science classes are required for Miguel to be able to graduate? Since he's only a sophomore, does he have other requirements that he has to take as a junior or a senior, or could he possibly make this up later down in his academic career? Section 5, let's review and prioritize. This is a critical situation that needs immediate attention due to the lack of attention to the law. This situation has devastating implications for multiple stakeholders, including Nottingham High School, Miguel and the Hernandez family, Ms. Guzman, Dr. Harvey, the student body, and the entire Dover community. Miguel's rights and needs are not being considered as a priority as they need to be. Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez rights are being violated along with Miguel's. Nottingham High School has a reputation. It could be the culture and the reputation could be in jeopardy. The student body will question if the school is looking out for their best interest if this is not taken care of correctly. And Dover community supports the school, but will that be altered if this situation is not handled correctly? And Ms. Guzman's reputation and her position are also in jeopardy as a school counselor. They could definitely be permanently damaged if this situation is not taken care of correctly. And my reputation as a principal will be damaged if not handled correctly. And Dr. Harvey is in need of this information in order to provide the necessary support. Identifying my opinions, the options, and the possible consequences. I have 6 options. Option 1 is take no action. Option 2 is contact the superintendent immediately. Option 3, write an IEP or a 504 plan. Option 4 is to change the location of biology class. Option 5 is a virtual or independent course equivalent. And option 6 is to finish the renovations to the school. Let's look at all the options. We have option 1, take no action. There are no positive things that happen if I don't take any action. All the cons to this, this would put the school in a dreadful legal situation. They would have the chance of losing federal funding, and I would definitely be terminated for gross negligence. Option 2, the contact the superintendent immediately. Follow the chain of command would be the pro. I would be alerting him of the situation. Sorry, I'd also be it would also give us time to contact the district legal team. And the cons of this, the superintendent will wonder why this actually happened in the first place, and he might actually lose faith in my abilities as a principal, because this should definitely be something that I saw coming from just the moment it happened. Option 3 is write an IEP or in a 504 plan. The pros to this is it determines Miguel's specific needs. It puts the needs of the student first, and the school will provide the necessary services, and we also know what the necessary services are for Miguel. The cons to this is a time-consuming process, and it will not solve the problem immediately. Option 4, we can change the location of the biology class. The pros to this, it would solve the problem immediately from a legal standpoint, and Miguel's needs would be met. We'd definitely be putting the student first. The cons to this is the biology teacher would be inconvenienced. The district would have to possibly compensate the teacher for a change of schedule and actually even either to move their classroom or just be able to travel throughout the day and just suit the needs of the students. Option 5 is to offer a virtual or independent course equivalent. The pros of this, if this would be a temporary solution. The cons, this may not be seen as a reasonable solution. Just taking Miguel out of the class just because we don't have access to it and offer him something virtual. And it would also place extra responsibilities on the teacher as far as coming up with the independent course or having to set it up virtually so he would be able to participate virtually. Option 6 is finishing the renovations to the school. The good part of this is it would bring the whole school up to code with the ADA and make them ADA compliant. The downside of this is not an immediate solution. This also, we have the lack of funding. And what financial effects would this have on the rest of the district? Definitely this needs to be a step, but it's probably going to be a step that's going to be later on down the line. Moving on to choosing the best option. I feel the best solution would actually be a combination of options. The first option would be contact the superintendent, change the location of the biology class, and write an IEP or a 504 plan. Now, what would this look like if I were to implement this decision? Step 1 would be contacting the superintendent. After the meeting, I would definitely communicate this issue with the superintendent, to help bring added support to the situation. It is also my responsibility to keep the superintendent aware of any and all legal issues within the school. And I'll also be seeking advice from the district leader. This is a vital thing that has to go on. So everyone is on the same page. I can't be saying one thing and he wants something else to be done. And this would help in expediting the communication process with the stakeholders and the legal team. As I'm taking care of certain things, he could be getting on the telephone. He could be getting stakeholders and the legal team all informed. The step 2 would be to change the location of the biology class. I'd personally write a formal invitation to Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez requesting a meeting. Miguel, I would also include in the letter that Miguel would be invited to the meeting as well, and any other person they could see having an input to this, as in Mr. Howard Carey, their attorney. I would also contact Mrs. Hernandez family by phone, so I would give them a written notice plus contacting them by phone. I would let them know who's all going to be in the meeting on the school district's side of things. I let them know that Dr. Harvey, district legal counsel, Ms. Guzman, the special education teacher, and the biology teacher would all be notified, and they would also all be present in the meeting. And the family would also be notified that during the meeting, Miguel would be reinstated to the biology class. Step 3, we need to write an IEP or a 504 plan. This is a very important step. I would need to notify the family in the meeting. We would need to start the process of determining the eligibility for an IEP or a Section 504 plan, and this would need to begin immediately. The special education department would also be notified we need to start the process in determining eligibility, and I would have started this beforehand, notifying the special education department so we can get the wheels in motion. And all the necessary paperwork would be given to Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez, ensuring everything is in accordance with the letter of the law. And so this would also give us the chance to discuss modifications and accommodations that Miguel would need. And the parents' input would be sought on this. It would just be a collaborative meeting that we would be able to discuss putting Miguel first and have the parents give their input, have us give our input. We'd be able to figure out how we can work together. And a plan would be developed as a collective team to be able to make everything right. I would also I would also end the meeting by apologizing from the very beginning how this situation was handled, and I would hope and I would guarantee them in the future that this would not happen again. And I just really want them to not lose confidence in the school, because we are going to do everything we possibly can to make sure Miguel is going to be successful in the school. Thank you very much, and I have really enjoyed this class, and I appreciate your time.